Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. It's all breaking right now. Gregg Pemberton will join us. We'll talk about the plight of the cops in Washington, D.C. That comes up this hour at 3:30. Will Scharf will be here, former federal prosecutor and attorney for President Trump. We've got a lot to discuss with him. That's at 4:30. 5 o'clock, John Daniel Davidson is here. We'll talk about the intel community, its meddling in our elections, and so much more. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A disaster in court today in Fulton County, Georgia, where it appears at this point that Donald Trump and his co-defendants have what is an airtight case that Fanni Willis, Nathan Wade, and that whole DA's office has been lying about the romantic relationship going on there, the conflict of interest, all of the money being paid. In fact, if you're curious, here's what MSNBC had to say about it just an hour or so ago.
Don't let the legalese fool you. This is epic. This is monumental. If things are going in the direction we think, Fanni Willis lied to the court, it's game over for her. She will be disqualified. If they had a relationship prior to when they represented to the court, it's a huge deal. I can't overstate it.
A tremendous deal. She can't overstate it. This is the end for Fanni Willis. This is an MSNBC legal analyst earlier. Here's one of the reasons why. They brought in a friend of Fanni Willis today by the name of Robin Yurdy, who knew her for many, many years, decades. And she said, no, their relationship didn't begin recently, Fanni Willis and Nathan Wade. In fact, it began in 2019.
When I ask you personal, do you take that to mean romantic?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand it that their relationship began in 2019 and continued until the last time you spoke with her?
Yes.
Yes, that's it. I mean, the relationship began as early as 2019. Nathan Wade took the stand today, and he admits that he spent a whole bunch of nights with Fanni Willis during travel. He claims the romantic relationship started in early 2022. That's important because he has said in sworn testimony that he didn't start having a romantic relationship with her until after he was hired in 2021.
And that you never cohabitated with Willis, correct?
That's correct.
By cohabitation, does that mean that you never spent the night with Willis?
I spent the night with her during travel. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so I just want to qualify your use of the term cohabitation. That means you didn't live together.
That's correct.
But you did spend the night together.
Yes.
When was the first time you spent the night together?
Your Honor.
That's the subject of his affidavit, Judge.
Right, but it might not be the subject of this hearing. So the question is the nature and extent of the relationship. And so if they just spent the night on a single occasion, I don't think we're going to document in detail every single time that happens.
And I don't intend to do that, Judge, but I think what is relevant is when the relationship started, and that's what you had indicated on.
Well, why don't we start with that question and go from there?
And that's what I asked, when the first time he spent the night with her was. That's what I asked.
That's a different question, isn't it?
Okay, so let's not talk about when you spent the night. When did your romantic relationship with Miss Willis begin?
2022.
When in 2022?
Early 2022.
So you were appointed in November of 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
And your relationship started early. What's early? January? February?
Around March.
Around March.
A massive disconnect between the testimony, those two different witnesses. And now, as we speak, Fanni Willis has taken a surprise appearance on the stand. There were objections coming from the Fulton County side of the argument to having her testify. Instead, she showed up in the courtroom just moments ago and said, no, I want to testify. Here she is live.
Of my office within this week, you produced some financial document. That financial document was given to me, and I'm not even sure who's given it to him by me or Mr. Abadi gave it to me. And I think he showed me a document in our conference room. But as far as a substantive conversation, I don't believe I've had any conversation with him that is substantive related to this.
Okay.
I have had conversations with him since you filed the motion, but they wouldn't be substantive to this. He sent me very nice sermons that have been done. And so we've had conversations about, did you listen to that sermon? You know, things of that nature. And I would say they were in relationship to this because I think he did it to be kind.
Okay. Let's start back in 2019.
Yep.
So you and Mr. Wade met in October 2019 at a conference?
That is correct. And I think in one of your motions you tried to implicate I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive. I stayed at that conference. Mr. Wade was my teacher. I did not meet him when he taught the class. I was standing outside talking to Lisa Reeves, who is a judge. Me and her were just having a conversation. Mr. Wade walks up. I think they hug each other. They have some brief conversation. She introduces us.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. We kind of thought that when you asked a question, you didn't answer the question, not a speech, so I object to the speech making.
I believe I'm able to explain my answers.
I believe she's able to explain her answers.
And that's
Ms. Merchant, that's okay. I can handle it. Ms. Willis, I'll ask you to just listen to the answer, or excuse me, the question, and keep the answers confined to the question as best you can. I think you'll have more than enough ample opportunity on when the state.
Well, it's highly offensive when someone lies on you, and it's highly offensive when they try to implicate that you slept with somebody the first day you met with them, and I take exception to it.
All right. Well, Ms. Willis, she'll have the opportunity to explain all of that when it's the state's turn to ask more open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Ms. Merchant.
Thank you, Judge. So again, my question was, you all met at that conference, though, right?
We did. The meeting,
Okay.
he, as I stated, he taught the class. I did not actually meet him when he taught the class. I walked out of the class, and I'm not sure if it was that exact class or we had went to lunch, but we were standing in the vestibule, like outside of the class.
Now, here's an important detail. I'm going to keep playing this for you, but you have the friend of decades who said she had a daily relationship, talked all the time. They talked about this relationship. She knew it was happening in 2019. The friend said the relationship began shortly after this conference. That's when she understood the romantic relationship to have begun in late 2019. So Fanni Willis at this moment is making a big show that, oh, we didn't have a relationship at the conference. Oh, good for you. You were able to control yourself. But it was a couple weeks later, apparently, that they were having this relationship, according to the friend.
Me and Judge Reeves were having a conversation. She had worked at a law firm I worked at back in 1996.
We're getting way far. I mean, I don't mind her explaining her answers, but I literally just asked if they met at that
She's
conference.
explaining how she met Mr. Wade, which was exactly the question asked by Ms. Merchant. These answers are more than appropriate.
You can also tell where this is going. She's going to use every opportunity to give massive, unrelated speeches to try and mount some sort of valiant defense.
Ms. Merchant, if you want more concise answers, perhaps you could lead the witness.
I will. Thank you, Judge. Isn't it true that you met Mr. Wade October 2019 at the judges conference?
We haven't gotten to the point where Ms. Willis should be treated hostile in this situation.
I think we have.
I very much want to be here, so I'm not a hostile witness. I very much want to be
Not
here.
so much that you're hostile, Ms. Willis, it'd be an adverse witness. Your interests are opposed to Ms. Merchant's.
Thank you.
Merchant's interests are contrary to democracy, Your Honor, not to mine.
Oh, my goodness.
Judge, I would just ask that
You like this? So she's saying any scrutiny of her having a massive conflict of interest, paying herself, self-dealing, giving all of this taxpayer money to her secret boyfriend who works for her and then turning around and receiving all these trips, scrutinizing that is a, quote, threat to democracy. These people have one sheet of music from which they sing.
Things moving. Ms. Merchant,
Thank you.
next question,
Thank you.
please.
Okay, so we've confirmed when you met. After that, isn't it true?
No, I need to explain this, and I think I
No,
get
you
to
don't,
explain my
actually.
answers.
She's the witness on the stand. You just answer the questions.
When I met him, Judge Reeves introduced us. He handed me his business card. I'm unsure if I handed him my business card.
Who cares?
But we exchanged information. He said, if you ever need any help, give me a call. And he walked to the parking lot.
Did he wink when he said it?
So after that, you started dating shortly thereafter, correct?
That's a lie. That's one of your lies.
Okay. Do you know Robin Yurdy?
I know her as Robin Bryant. I knew her. So Robin did not go to my college. She went to the college of, I went to Howard University. She went to Morgan State. I
This
met
is the
her
friend.
through some people I knew. In college, we hung out a bit. Not much because she was in Baltimore and I was in Washington, D.C., but we hung out a bit. After college, I lost contact with her. I probably didn't see Robin again until maybe 7 or 8 years ago, a chance meeting here in Atlanta, but we did not have a consistent relationship from...
Robin reported this morning in her testimony that they were good friends. She said, I wouldn't say best friends, but we were very good friends.
I left college and came to Emory Law School here in Atlanta, but 8 to 10 years ago, Just by happenstance, I ran into her.
So
she was in Atlanta.
You have been friends with Robin for 30-something years.
Did you hear my answer, ma'am?
Yes, and I'm asking if you've been friends with her for 30-something years.
I've known her for 30-something years. We certainly hung out and partied together in college. She was from the D.C. area. She would come home, we partied together. Wasn't close, but she was certainly in the girlfriends that partied together. And then, like I said,
We weren't close. We were just girlfriends who partied together. I love that explanation.
I ran into her about 10 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia. But we didn't talk throughout that time period. I didn't see her. I didn't even know where she was. When I ran into her, I was surprised she was in Atlanta. And so, yes, I have known her probably since 1990, 1991, but we have not maintained a consistent relationship that whole time.
Okay. For the last 10 years, or 5, whatever you'd like to classify it as, have you been friends with her?
I have not spoken to Robin in over a year. I certainly do not consider her a friend now.
Now, so here's some of the backstory. Robin was explaining this morning. She went and she worked for Fanni Willis. Fanni just hires all of her friends and the people she's sleeping with, apparently. And she hired her friend to this office. She was working there, and she fired her, or at least she gave her the choice to resign. She said, "You can resign." So apparently she resigned at some point, and since then their friendship's been broken, which you might understand if something like that happened. But she's saying, "I haven't talked to her in a while." Yeah, that was when you canned her or gave her no other choice.
I think that she, there's a saying, no good deed goes unpunished, and I think that she betrayed our friendship.
So let's narrow it down the timeline now. So my questions are going to be from the time period of 2019 until she no longer was employed for you, the last time you all talked. So all of my next questions are just focused on that time frame, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Up until she left your office.
Yes, ma'am.
During 2019, you all were friends, correct?
Yes, we knew each other in 2019.
During 2020, you all were friends, correct?
We were friends during that time period.
During 2021, you all were friends, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And such good friends that when you needed a place to stay, you asked her if you could take over her lease.
That's a lie.
You did not move into her apartment?
I did, but that's not the way you characterize it. Is wrong.
I asked if you could take over her lease.
I did not ask if I could take over her lease.
Did you move into her apartment?
I moved into her condo in April of 21. The circumstances around that were that Robin met her husband. They wanted to move into another and separate place. She wanted to get rid of her condo. My father was living with me at the house. Because of this case and because of my stance on gangs, my life was being threatened regularly. My father urged me to leave our home. At the same time, as luck would have it, Robin wanted to give up her lease because she wanted to move in with this new man she met, who eventually became her husband. And so, as life circumstances work...
In other words, you knew her well enough that she hooked you up with this lease arrangement.
My dad was begging me to leave the house. He was afraid for me, afraid for his grandchildren. She wanted someone to take over her lease so that she didn't, have to pay a fee or get abandoned. And so, I don't remember when, but probably March or April of 21, I moved in and take over her lease.
And did you pay her or did you pay the leasing agent?
No, I don't even know who the leasing agent was. I paid her.
You paid her. Did you pay her cash or did you use a card?
There were some times that I would give her cash, but mostly I paid her via Cash App. That would be the most convenient thing. So I would not only give her rent, but then like when the utilities would come in, whatever the utility was, she might be like, I need
So what the attorney's doing right now is establishing that they do have a long-running relationship, an intimate friendship, well enough that it was a matter of a living arrangement. She could stay in the place. She was even subleasing the place through her friend. And remember, the friend testifies this morning that romantic relationship between Nathan Wade and Fanni Willis began back in 2019, which is central because at this point, what that means is if that's true, that Fanni Willis and Nathan Wade have lied to the court in Georgia about their relationship and when it started. And the end result of all of this is that this case will completely collapse. And Donald Trump is going to be able to walk away without this election meddling, at least in Fulton County, Georgia, hanging over his head. That's one of the potential outcomes here. It's fascinating to watch these Democrat election meddlers squirm right now under well-deserved scrutiny. And so if we get any interesting and or hilarious updates from there, we'll share them with you. The left very much upset. A lot of agita today. That's what they call it. About what's happening You see Jack Smith yesterday, also in all these cases trying to meddle in the election. Jack Smith saying the Supreme Court needs to hurry up already and let him prosecute Trump. It's got to happen. And the rationale, he said in his court filing, is that there's a pressing public interest because it involves a guy who tried to subvert the 2020 election. Well, wait a second. Hold up. 2020 was, 4 years ago. And so it's a pressing interest? Why is it so urgent right now if it involves stuff from 2020? Why not just let it play out? And guess what he doesn't say in the filing? Not a single time. I've got to get this done before this election. He never uses those words in any capacity. I mean, it's implied, but Jack Smith is trying to hit the accelerator right now in front of the United States Supreme Court because he wants to meddle in this election. That's what the court filing was yesterday. So, and so no indication yet how the Supreme Court's going to handle all of that, but they're considering this immunity claim by Trump, and Jack Smith would very much like them to meddle in the election. Please, please, please meddle in the election. Also, Manhattan today, a judge ruled today that jury selection for Donald Trump's so-called hush money trial. This is, his non-disclosure agreement with Stormy Daniels. The trial is going to begin March 25th. March 25th. This is the Alvin Bragg case. This is the most ridiculous. They're all ridiculous, but this is the single most ridiculous. So ridiculous that the left has been attacking it from day one. They're like, well, this one's kind of stupid. Trump's going to win this one. It's the Julie Swetnick of cases. And apparently that's the first up. It's going to go the 25th of March, at least for now. We'll see. We'll see. It's all pretty ridiculous. Hey, coming up, we've got Gregg Pemberton joining us, the head of the D.C. Police Union. We have to talk about this. A man in Southeast D.C. yesterday opens fire, strikes 3 police officers, and spends the next, 10, 12, 13 hours barricaded, firing a gun outside the building every so often. And we're supposed to think this is normal? Gregg Pemberton joins us next. Good afternoon to you. 3:35. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, 4:30, Will Scharf is with us, a former federal prosecutor, an attorney for President Trump, and a candidate for Attorney General in Missouri. A lot to talk about with him. Big legal day today. John Daniel Davison joins us at 5 o'clock as the intel community gets all worked up over Russian aggression. But maybe we should be focused on what's happening here in America. We'll talk to John Daniel Davison about that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A lot of troubling headlines out of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, this week, just in the last 24 hours. For instance, 4 killed, 2 critically wounded in separate shootings in Washington, D.C., in less than 2 hours last night in Northeast Washington. That's the Washington Post coverage. Also, 3 people were found deceased in a Northeast D.C. apartment, police say. Additionally, we watched yesterday as a police barricade, not a police barricade, but a barricade situation went on for hours upon hours yesterday in Southeast D.C. after police were trying to serve an arrest warrant for an animal cruelty charge. Somebody opens fire on the cops, striking 3 of them, and then barricades himself inside the house for many hours on end, finally surrendering last night. Here to talk about what's happening in the nation's capital is the chairman of the D.C. Police Union, Gregg Pemberton. Gregg, good to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Vince, thanks for having me.
This has been a busy 24 hours, and this unfortunately feels commonplace.
It does. And, I think, I've been coming on your show for a long time now, and I think I keep trying to warn everybody that if we don't do something, the situation's going to get worse. And unfortunately, tragically, that seems to be coming true. But yesterday was a bit of an exception. We had 3 officers that were shot, as you stated. They were trying to serve an arrest warrant. These are members from the Criminal Apprehension Unit. They're tasked with tracking down these guys that have active warrants and getting handcuffs on them. They went and found this guy, and he decided he didn't want to be arrested, so he opens fire on them. And the 3 officers that were struck, one of them was struck twice in the vest, and luckily the vest absorbed both of the rounds. The other two officers were struck in the lower leg with some pretty serious injuries, but luckily they're going to recover, and we saw them going home from the hospital earlier today. So, but again, the violence still rages with, as you said, all the homicides going on, the shootings, the carjackings. None of it seems to be abated. And frankly, I don't see any change in sight until we see some really significant movement from the city council.
If we can stick to the barricade situation for just a moment. That stretched on for 13 hours yesterday, and my understanding is after the initial exchange of gunfire where he fires upon and wounds several D.C. police officers, that throughout the day he kept firing indiscriminately from inside of his home outward. Is that your understanding too?
Those are the reports that we have, is that he was firing from inside the home at the officers that were trying to approach the house, or at the police vehicles that were outside of his home. Yeah, there was significant amount of gunfire that continued.
How does something like that go on for 13 hours? Could that have been concluded more quickly?
I mean, possibly. I think what I'll say is that ultimately he came out and surrendered without incident, and the officers were able to get him in custody and also deal with these 31 dogs that were inside the house, and they've all been taken into custody by the Humane Society, and hopefully they'll find a better place. But the suspect was being arrested because there was video of him punching the dogs in the face that was taken by neighbors and provided to authorities. So, this isn't a real gentleman that's out there. He's out here shooting cops and beating up dogs, and we're just trying to do our job, and unfortunately, it's a difficult situation. One
of the many unfortunate features of this story I noticed is that yesterday, when there was video going around from a neighbor's camera on their home, the neighbor did not want to be identified in any of the press reporting. The people, they're trying to share information, but they really don't want anyone to know who's sharing it. People are scared of the consequences of revealing the criminality in their own communities.
Well, and that goes back to the lack of prosecutions, right? Because if you do go out and you tell the police officer, hey, I saw what happened and this is who's responsible, and then the police department goes and arrests that person, but the prosecutors and the courts don't hold him accountable and he's back on the corner the next day, that's a little unnerving. Now that this individual, who you obviously know is prone to violence, you've observed him engage in it, and now he's walking around the neighborhood knowing that you told the police about his behavior. So, all of these situations sort of exacerbate themselves, which is that now the lack of prosecutions, decreases the amount of influence that the witnesses have on these cases that we investigate.
This is, of course, as we look at the weather each day, it's a cold time of year, but as things warm up, the crime situation typically does change as well, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You can look at the crime stats by month. The police department has some of that data on their website, and you can see, typically June, July, August, sometimes even into September. Those are the months where you really start to see a lot of the violence going on. So this is typically a lull where you have January, February, sort of the harsher months of the year. There's less people outside. There's less activity. There's less interaction. And we usually do see a lull in the crime stats this time of year. But as it gets warmer, it will pick up.
So is the D.C. Police Department prepared for this? The Metropolitan Police? I mean, what's going to happen going into the summer?
Well, that's the problem, Vince, is that we're short 500 police officers because of these policies that have been enacted by the city council that prevent cops from being able to do their jobs and put all these onerous restrictions on them and expose them to liabilities even when they do their job properly. So, we've lost 1,407 police officers since these bills have passed. We've only been able to hire 900, which gives us this gap of 500 police officers, which is, almost 20% of the department. And with those shortages and with this uptick in crime that we've all seen over the past few years, it's almost impossible for us to get these things under control. And it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight because the provisions that are preventing us from hiring people are not going away.
No, not at all. Talk about some of the ongoing problems at the leadership level that are hamstringing cops and making the crime situation worse.
Yeah, well, the City Council passed the Comprehensive Policing and Justice Reform Act back in 2020, which eliminated all the rights that police officers have and made it so they can't watch their own body-worn camera. It changed the use of force policy, so sort of any incidental contact with the subject's neck is now classified as an unjustified chokehold. They've changed the rubric that they use to use force, which is no longer the Supreme Court standard. It's now this new D.C. Council standard where they can sort of armchair quarterback and Monday morning quarterback your activities. The list goes on and on and on. And the fact is that the provisions and the policies that have been implemented on the police department make it impossible for cops to do their job. And there's just a chilling effect that this has when they see other officers doing their job and getting in trouble or worse. And again, we're not going to be able to get these staffing levels to where they need to be until the city council decides to repeal the kooky and convoluted ideas that they came up with in 2020.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of them want to do that.
Yeah. So you're pointing directly to the city council first and foremost, although I have noticed that all of the various people who are tasked with having some say in how D.C. is led, they're all blaming everybody else, whether it's the council blaming the mayor blaming the council, the U.S. attorney, Matthew Graves blaming everybody else, or the courts. It seems like a lot of blame going around, but not very, very many solutions.
Well, that's typical D.C., and we see the finger pointing a lot when these issues crop up. But what I'll say is that the reason that we don't have the right number of police officers is because of actions taken by the council. These were things that were either vetoed by the mayor and overridden, or not signed by the mayor, and they're putting implementations on the police and, frankly, the prosecutors that make it impossible for us to do our job. But even if you want to blame prosecutors or judges, the fact of the matter is that police officers are the ones that go out and put handcuffs on bad guys and get them into that system. We're the sort of front end, the intake of that criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. And if we're not able to do that, if we can't actually identify bad guys and arrest them and book them, then that means they've gotten away with the crime. And it really doesn't matter what's downstream of that, because they'll never see the inside of a courtroom anyway. So we've got to get these staffing numbers up so that we can go out here. We're using 1.1 million hours of overtime every year, which is just ungodly number to deal with. And again, it grinds officers out and puts us in a position where it's difficult to hire.
Right. Yeah. And it also just as a pure monetary measure, it's you run out of money. You run out of money, and then you can't hire other people because you're spending all of it on overtime.
Well, that's right. If you're paying people time and a half to work hours that you could pay somebody straight time, if you just hired the right number of employees, then you're wasting millions of dollars of taxpayer money. And those officers are going to get sick and tired of working, not having days off, getting held over, being called in early to work, and not being able to have a family life outside of work. And we see a lot of people leaving because of those very reasons, going to jurisdictions that don't have these onerous responsibilities. And so, we're asking the city council to fix these things. We pointed directly to what it is, and they basically fold their arms and roll their eyes and slam the door in our face, saying we're not changing that. And the fact is, that's the only way that we can fix it, is if they're going to undo what broke it.
It seems to me that at some point it has to take like a community groundswell or something to confront the D.C. City Council. I'm not sure what it is, because you're telling them, obviously the police are saying this is what we need and are being ignored. The residents in places like Southeast definitely are suffering the consequences of all of this. Something needs to change.
Well, I'll tell you what I think could make a change is right now there's an effort to recall Charles Allen, who's the Ward 6 council member, and he was the champion of these policies. I mean, there was nobody that was louder about defunding the police, demonizing the police, and making sure that we didn't have any of the tools to do our job, passing a lot of policies that put us in jeopardy even when we're doing our job properly. And I think the members of Ward 6 are sick of him and sick of his rhetoric and sick of him not responding to their calls to change. And so now there's a pretty legitimate and well-funded recall effort to get him yanked out of office by the ankles. So, we're keeping an eye on that. I think, even though it's only one ward, it's one council member out of 13, I think it really does send a message to the rest of the council that their behavior is not consistent with what the citizens want. And I think that's the biggest disconnect, is that the city council is listening to activists and anti-police rhetoric, and they're not listening to their own citizens or victims or even the police officers who are telling them what they need.
And does your union support the recall effort?
Formally, no, we haven't done anything to get involved, but ideologically, absolutely. I think Charles Allen, I think that the best thing that the city could have is if he were to resign today. He is absolutely the worst person that's out there in terms of public safety, and all of this bedlam and mayhem that we've been discussing over the years the blame should be laid squarely at his feet.
It's a rough time, and again, something has to change. Gregg Pemberton, chairman of the D.C. Police Union. Sir, thank you very much for your time, as always, and God bless the cops here in Washington, D.C., doing the best they can given the circumstances. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vince. Have a good day.
Good to talk to you. Let's see. Let's take Chris in Missouri now, line 2. Chris, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Mr. Coglianese. I am a current chief of police, and I am a SWAT operator.
How about it?
I just want to point. I'm sorry?
I said, how about that? Thank you for calling in. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
Oh, my pleasure. The 13 hours, normally once you have a suspect hold up like that, you don't want to rush in, because you rush in, that just risks lives. I mean, bullets fly all over the place. He's shooting all over the place.
Yeah.
You risk his life. You risk the life of your SWAT team and civilians. So you want to wait him out. You've got the pleasure of all the time that's needed for him to surrender peacefully. And every SWAT team wants that to happen. We want a peaceable end. And that's why we hold on so long, because we have the luxury of time and putting different people in. He's going to be there until he gets tired, and that's when he surrenders. And if no shots are fired, we're always happy.
Yeah, no, that's a big deal. I just it's frustrating from the outside. I take your word for it. I believe you, Chris, and God bless you for doing it. But I'm thinking, man, he's just firing indiscriminately out of his windows every, 20 minutes we heard in some cases. And really, that's how long it has to go on for 13 hours like that in that poor community. And nothing can be done. But you say that the safest option is just to wait him out.
As long as there's nobody in his line of fire, if he's just indiscriminately firing and not really placing anybody in harm's way, that you can wait out. Personally, when bullets are flying, it's hard to determine who is and is not in harm's way. But that's a call for the incident commander on the ground. If he thought that nobody was being risked by his indiscriminate firing, it's best to wait him out. Now, if you think he's indiscriminately firing at people, you got to go in. That's what you're there for.
Yeah, then the firing becomes discriminate. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate the call, the listenership, and the service, sir. All right, hold tight. I've got more. Apparently, I'm kind of keeping an eye on the Fanni Willis testimony down in Georgia, too. She's been very animated. She is upset, which means we should have some good audio coming up. It's 3 News. Is she back in court now? Yeah, okay. So this is the whole Fanni Willis saga is so fascinating today. She is losing her mind on the stand. She's mad now. She's like, I'm not on trial. She's freaking out. It's him. It's Trump is on trial. She's losing it, ladies and gentlemen. The judge had to call for a break because she was going mental. Here she is just moments ago. Take a listen.
Your office objected to us getting Delta records for flights that you may have taken with Mr. Wade.
Well, no. I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
So my question was, do you have any problem?
I object to getting any personal records of mine.
We're not dealing with.
I'm not on trial. Today's all about how you suck. That's what this whole thing is about, and how obvious it is.
No. I'm not dealing with privilege. What we had offered to put them in camera for the court to review, and I just want to know if she has any
That's
problem.
not something you deal with a witness.
Little dispute.
Okay. You have to file as part of your job something called an income and financial disclosure report, correct?
That's correct.
And you filed your first one. So you filed 2 today? Is that right?
Is it 2 or 3? I probably would have filed 21, 22, and maybe I haven't filed 23 yet, because isn't it due like June of the next year?
April, I believe. So you filed, let's see, you filed your first one, it looks like April 15th, 2022, and your second one, April 17th, 2023. Does that sound familiar?
That I don't remember the dates, but you're an officer of the court. I'm gonna hope you're telling the truth now.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you. I already gave the state a copy. Exhibits 20 and 21. If you take a look at those, they were part of the certified.
I think it's around here that
Can somebody bring me some? Yeah.
that they have to call everything off. She's getting her glasses out, putting her reading glasses on, so she can read the evidence of her sins.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Those are the ones that you filed.
This looks like me for sure. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Judge, we'd move to admit 20 and 21.
think you need to delineate which ones. Which
20
one's which.
is 2021.
Fanni
so
Willis.
It accounts for the time period, Your Honor, January the 1st, 21 through
Under
December the
scrutiny
31st,
today in
2021.
Georgia.
That is Defendant's Exhibit 20. Defendant's Exhibit 2021.
Screeching,
it
I'm not on
accounts for the time
trial.
period, January
Trump's on
the 1st,
trial.
2022
He's stealing
through
our
December the
democracy.
1st of 2022.
All right. Any objection to exhibits 20 and 21
Nope.
No.
Sorry.
from other counsel?
Meanwhile, she's stealing from the taxpayers.
Objection.
When did your relationship?
Yeah, this winds itself down. So the judge just called a break in the court for a few minutes. Now everything is back on. The drama continues. Willis under questioning right now about her long, winding relationship with Nathan Wade. Looks like that case is falling apart in Georgia. I guess we'll see. Hey, coming up on the program, one of Donald Trump's attorneys, Will Scharf, will be with us in the next hour. A lot to get to.